It didn't start with a scream. It started with a silence filled with expectation, and then a sudden, icy shift. My smart home system, the very one I designed, flashed a single, cold notification: access denied. In that moment, confusion turned quickly to pain. Then came the text from my mother, a sentence that cracked my heart wider than any earthquake could. "Please don't come. Let your brother shine. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe to help me reach 1,000 followers. Thank you." Today's story isn't just about a stolen house. It is about the moment you realize you are no longer a daughter, but merely a resource. It is a reminder that sometimes, to find your own light, you must stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. Tell me, what would you do if the people you loved most quietly erased you from their happiest day? It doesn't just rain in Seattle in late October. The whole city seems submerged in a shroud of gray mist, cold, damp, and relentless. From the window of my 30th floor penthouse, I could see the Space Needle fading into the distance, standing solitary amidst the downpour like a needle piercing the gloomy sky. I love this weather. The inherent gloom of the Pacific Northwest has always brought me a strange sense of security, a stillness that allows me to focus absolutely on the complex technical drawings awaiting approval. This morning should have proceeded according to the perfect order I have established over the last 15 years: a cup of dark roast Arabica black coffee, 30 minutes of reading real estate market news, and then clearing work emails before driving to the office. In my world, everything has a process, every variable is calculated, and every risk has a contingency plan. I am Elena, chief architect, paid an exorbitant salary to ensure that skyscrapers never collapse in the face of a storm. But this morning, the collapse didn't come from a building. It came from the phone lying dormant on the cold marble countertop. It didn't ring. There was no emergency call from a construction site, no piercing alarm. Just a slight vibration, accompanied by a pale blue light from the screen signaling a notification from the smart home app, the very system for which I personally wrote the core code. The text that appeared was brief and emotionless, yet its destructive power was stronger than any seismic activity I had ever experienced. "System warning, your admin access at the glass cliff has been revoked." I furrowed my brow, my fingers swiping the screen out of reflex. Maybe it was a system error, maybe a network glitch after last night's storm. The glass cliff wasn't just a house, it was my masterpiece, a $4 million asset perched precariously on a cliff overlooking Puget Sound, clad entirely in load-bearing tempered glass imported from Germany. I am the owner, the name on the deed, and more importantly, I am its creator. For me to be stripped of access to my own home was technically absurd, but when I tried to log back in, the screen displayed only a glowing red padlock icon, coldly refusing to recognize my face. A second later, as if programmed to deliver a fatal follow-up blow, a new email popped up in my inbox. Sender Lucas. Subject: regarding tomorrow's event. I took a sip of coffee, but the familiar bitter taste now felt insipid, as if my taste buds had been paralyzed. I opened the email. No affectionate greeting, no familial warmth, just the tone of half-baked corporate jargon Lucas always used when he wanted to play the successful businessman. "Dear Elena," the email read, "the media team and I just wrapped up a meeting regarding the green blockchain launch party tomorrow at the Glass Cliff. The investors from Silicon Valley are very focused on privacy and the energy of the party. After careful consideration, I think it's best if you don't attend. Your presence, with your exacting standards and critical eye for architecture, would make the atmosphere a bit tense. I want everything to be natural and chill. I know you'll understand for the greater good. Thanks for lending us the venue." I read the word tense over and over again. In Lucas's dictionary, tense meant the presence of the person who paid for all his mistakes. He wanted to enjoy the fruits of my labor: the house, the sound system, the wine cellar, but he didn't want to see the face of the person who created them. He wanted the luxury I provided, but he wanted to erase my existence. Just as I was about to set the phone down, another message appeared. This time from my mother, Patricia. The coordination was terrifyingly seamless. "Mom just heard from Lucas. Let him shine for once. Honey, don't go there just to nitpick this and that. Don't be selfish. Elena, don't ruin your brother's big moment. You already have everything. Would it hurt to let him have a little spotlight? Selfish. The word was a dagger plunged into my chest, twisting deep into an old wound that had never truly healed. For the past 15 years, since Dad died, I hadn't lived a single day fully for myself. I was the one who paid off Lucas's first gambling debt when he was 20. I was the one who bought the Lexus that Mom was driving. I was the one who paid the hospital bills, the insurance, the vacations, and the capital for Lucas's 3 previously failed startups. I had built my life around being a safety net for them. I never asked for a thank you. I only needed minimal respect. But this morning, through a digital notification and 2 cold messages, they sent me a message clearer than any spoken word. I am not a family member. I am a tool. I am a walking ATM and a free construction crew. And now, when the house is finished, the wine is uncorked, and the spotlight is on, the builder is no longer welcome. I looked out the window. The rain was still falling, droplets smashing against the penthouse glass, creating long, jagged streaks like cracks. I didn't cry. At 34, as a woman managing hundreds of men in the cutthroat construction industry, I had learned to swallow my tears. Emotions don't solve problems. Only actions solve problems. But inside me, in the deepest part, something just shattered. It wasn't a loud explosion, not an outbreak of rage that makes you want to smash furniture. It was a quiet snap, subtle as the sound of a violin string stretched too far and breaking in silence. It was the sound of the severance between me and the people I once called family. They thought they were simply banning me from a party. They had no idea that seizing my admin rights and uninviting me from my own home was the final drop that caused the cup of endurance filled to the brim for years to overflow. Lucas thought he could use technology to eliminate me. He forgot who set up that system. My mother thought using the psychological guilt trip of being selfish would make me back down and send more money to atone. She was mistaken. I set the phone down, picked up the now stone-cold coffee, and downed it in one go. The bitter astringency spread through my mouth, clearing my mind in a strange way. I didn't text back to argue. I didn't call to scream or beg them to let me come. My silence right now was not submission. It was the calm before the storm. I stood up and walked toward my home office, where my dedicated workstation with 3 large monitors sat waiting. If they wanted to play games about control and technology, I would show them the level of a true expert. They wanted drama-free. Fine, I would bring them something far beyond drama. I would bring them reality. A reality as cold, ruthless, and fair as the contracts they never bothered to read properly. My hands glided lightly over the mechanical keyboard, the rhythmic clacking echoing in the quiet room like the chambering of a round in a rifle. The screens lit up, reflecting my emotionless face. Lucas, Mom, you 2 just made the biggest mistake of your lives. You woke up an architect, and you forgot that the person who knows how to build a perfect building is also the one who knows exactly where the fatal structural weakness lies to bring it all down with a single button. Game on. Seattle, where I live and work, is a city built on contradictions. It possesses both the wild lushness of evergreen forests and the cold, sharp edges of steel and glass from tech towers. My office is located on the 45th floor of the Columbia Center, from where I can watch white ferries cutting across the slate-gray waters of Elliott Bay. On my business card, my title is embossed in minimalist black ink, Elena Vance, Chief Architect. In my world, precision is a religion. When I sign off on a technical drawing for a luxury condominium or a mixed-use commercial center, I don't just sign my name. I sign a wager on the lives of the thousands of people who will walk inside. A steel beam misaligned by a single millimeter, a miscalculation in the concrete's load-bearing capacity, or a moment of complacency regarding the wind load of a coastal storm, all of it could lead to catastrophe. Therefore, I live my life like a perfect CAD drawing. Every line is straight, every parameter is verified, and there is no room for improvisation or error. I am the woman who is always on time, always dressed in bespoke suits without a single wrinkle, and always the last one to leave the office when the city lights have turned on. My colleagues call me the Ice Queen because of my exacting standards and cold demeanor at work. They admire my career, they envy the wealth I've accumulated, but they don't know that behind the facade of a brilliant architect who creates dream living spaces for others, I am trapped in the most dilapidated structure of my life: my family. My family is a building with a rotting foundation, yet painted with a flashy exterior funded by my money. The tragedy began 15 years ago, in a hospital room reeking of antiseptic. My father, the only man who ever truly protected me, lay gasping for air after a stroke. Before taking his final breath, he squeezed my hand, a hand that, back then, belonged to just an ambitious first-year architecture student, and whispered a dying injunction that became a life sentence for me. "Take care of Mom and your brother, Elena. You are the strong one. Don't let this family fall apart." I cried and nodded. At the time, I thought it was an instruction born of love, but looking back now, I realize it was a transfer of burden. My father was too tired of shouldering my mother's weakness and Lucas's irresponsibility, so he handed that cross over to me. And I, with the naive pride of youth, voluntarily crucified myself upon it. I turned myself into reinforced concrete columns to hold up their collapsing sky. When I was 24, having just received my first large bonus from the city library renovation project, I didn't buy myself a designer handbag or a trip to Europe like my peers. I used that entire sum to fly to Las Vegas to bail Lucas out of a casino VIP room where he was being held for a $50,000 debt. He wept, swearing it was just an occupational hazard while seeking investment capital. My mother hugged him, blaming me for arriving too late and making her poor boy scared. No one asked me where I got that money. No one asked how many extra nights I had to work to earn it. When I was 28, as my career began to skyrocket, my mother started complaining about her old car. "Margaret's car is so smooth. Sitting in ours makes my back ache," she mentioned casually at dinner. The following week, a brand new Lexus was parked in her driveway. She beamed, showing off her filial daughter to the whole neighborhood, but she never once asked if I was tired from driving an hour every day to visit her. I became the fixer. And whenever there was trouble, from a burnt-out light bulb to medical bills, to Lucas's insane startup ideas, they called my name, and I always showed up. With a checkbook and a feigned calmness, I thought that if I gave enough, I could buy their love. I thought that if I played the role of the pillar well enough, they would look at me with the same respect Dad once did. But I was wrong. In architecture, there is a fundamental principle. If you keep reinforcing a faulty structure without fixing the foundation, you are only delaying the collapse, and the glass cliff is where that naked truth is most clearly visible. It is the house I spent 5 years of my youth designing and building. It isn't located in a crowded residential area. I chose a plot of land perched precariously on a sheer cliff overlooking Puget Sound, where the waves crash violently against the rocks day and night. I wanted a house that truly reflected my inner self, solitary, strong, and transparent. I utilized a cantilever structure so the house projects out from the cliff, suspended between the sky and the sea. The entire ocean-facing facade is made of low-E tempered glass, imported from Germany, a type of glass that can withstand Category 12 hurricane winds yet retains absolute transparency. The floors are paved with black marble, cold but luxurious. I poured $4 million into it, but its spiritual value is priceless. It is my sanctuary, where I can shed my strong armor to be weak, to watch the storm outside while feeling safe inside. But to Mom and Lucas, the glass cliff isn't a work of art or a home. To them, it is a venue, a 5-star event location that happens to be completely free. Every Thanksgiving or Christmas, they insist on hosting parties at my house. "Your house is so big. It's a waste to leave it empty," my mother would say. And so, I open the doors. I hire the staff. I order the most expensive food. I remember last year's Christmas party vividly. In the vast living room with the modern fireplace crackling, Lucas stood in the center, holding a glass of Grand Cru wine from my collection, drunkenly recounting his startup project selling virtual NFT sneakers. Everyone from distant relatives to family friends surrounded him, laughing and applauding. My mother looked at him with eyes sparkling with pride, as if he were the king of the night. And me, I sat at the farthest corner of the 12-seat walnut dining table. I sat there, sipping wine, watching the cozy scene before me while feeling a chill run down my spine. No one asked me about the 60-story tower project I had just won the bid for. No one asked why I had lost weight. Even when Lucas accidentally spilled red wine onto the pristine white sheepskin rug, worth $5,000, my mother just waved it off. "Oh, Elena will handle it. It's just a rug." In that moment, amidst the loud laughter and the clinking of glasses, I realized the bitter truth. I was not sitting at the table with my family. I was sitting with the worst clients of my life. I am a sponsor. I am the angel investor for their failures. I have an unlimited credit card. But I am not a daughter, not a sister in the true sense of familial bond. They love the convenience I bring, but they hate my success because it shines a light on Lucas's failure. They need my money, but they are allergic to my control and my principles. My mother always protects Lucas because she sees herself in his weakness. And me? I'm too tough, too independent, too much reinforced concrete for them to think that I can feel pain. But concrete has a breaking point. And today, when they banned me from stepping foot into the glass cliff, the place that holds my soul and my money, so that Lucas could play the role of a self-made millionaire, they inadvertently drilled a fatal hole into my final load-bearing point. I stood up from my office chair and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The rain was still falling heavily, blurring the boundary between sky and sea. I looked at my reflection in the glass, a 34-year-old woman, successful, powerful, yet utterly solitary. I built skyscrapers for everyone to look up to, but I forgot to build boundaries to protect myself. "Fine, Mom. Fine, Lucas," I whispered to my own silhouette. "If you want me to play the role of a cold investor instead of a forgiving sister, then I will play that role to perfection." In architecture, when a building is deemed unsafe, the only accepted protocol is seal off, evacuate, and if necessary, controlled demolition. I turned back to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a black portable hard drive. This contains the physical backup of the entire Glasscliff system. And more importantly, it holds the financial evidence I have silently collected over the years. I never thought I would have to use it. I kept it as a professional habit of data archiving. But now, it will be the detonator. I am no longer sad. The dull ache from earlier has vanished, giving way to a cold, sharp focus. I picked up my phone, but not to call my family. I dialed the number of a man I knew for certain would stand on my side, not out of affection, but out of respect and core interests. "Hello, Arthur. It's me. Elena, I need a favor. Yes, it involves the house, and it involves Dad's real will. The parasite's game is about to end, and the architect's purge begins. Lucas, my younger brother, is the living embodiment of a modern paradox, a 30-year-old man who believes he is a billionaire temporarily down on his luck, while in reality, he is still sharing a family phone plan paid for by his sister. In psychology, they call Lucas the golden child. In my mother's eyes, he is never wrong. He is simply misunderstood. But in my eyes, Lucas is a long string of failed projects funded by my patience and my bank account. Before arriving at this insane idea of green blockchain, Lucas had tried his hand at being a startup CEO 3 times. The first was a dating app exclusively for owners of exotic pets. It burned through $40,000 of my savings on hiring Instagram KOLs to promote it. But he forgot to build a server robust enough to run the app. The result? The app crashed on launch day, and my money evaporated along with the stories that disappeared after 24 hours. The second time was a business idea for organic flavor craft beer. Lucas imported tons of barley and rented an expensive warehouse in the suburbs, only to abandon it halfway through when he realized the fermentation process required actual work, not just sitting around designing cool bottle labels. And now, it's blockchain. I remember that evening vividly 2 weeks ago. Lucas invited me to dinner at Mom's house. As soon as I walked through the door, I smelled the scent of a favor. Lucas wasn't wearing his usual t-shirt and jeans. He was wearing a black turtleneck, beige khakis, and round-rimmed glasses, the uniform of Silicon Valley tech CEOs that he picked up from watching TED Talks. "Elena," Lucas began, his voice deep and warm, feigning a professional demeanor as he poured me a glass of cheap wine. "I don't want to ask you for money. Not this time. I found the next big thing. It's green crypto, a decentralized financial ecosystem, but environmentally friendly." He rambled on endlessly with grandiose buzzwords: NFTs, smart contracts, paradigm shift. I sat listening, gently swirling my wine glass, my mind automatically filtering out the cliches to find the core of the issue, and that core, as always, was emptiness. Lucas didn't know how to code. He didn't understand macroeconomics. He was only good at selling dreams. "So what do you need from me?" I cut through his long-winded presentation. "If it's not money, then what is it?" Lucas set his glass down, leaned forward, his eyes lighting up with ambition. "I need a venue. I need the Glass Cliff." I froze. The Glass Cliff wasn't a venue. It was my home. "I've invited the biggest angel investors from San Francisco to fly here next week," Lucas continued, his voice excited. "They are picky people. They don't care about a business plan on paper. They care about the vibe, about class. If I host the launch at a hotel or a convention center, I'm just one of thousands of startups out there. But if I welcome them at the Glass Cliff, God, imagine it. Elena, a transparent glass mansion perched on a cliff, overlooking the churning ocean. It screams success, boldness, and infinite vision. It is the very image of my brand." "No," I replied instantly. "That is my private space. I have confidential documents, unpublished drawings, and those marble floors are not meant for the high heels of hundreds of strangers." Lucas's face fell as quickly as a child deprived of candy, and that was when my mother, who had been sitting silently observing from the beginning, entered the game. She was a master of the art of guilt-tripping. She placed a hand on my shoulder, sighing heavily. "Elena, look at your brother. He's been trying for so many years. He just needs a push. You have everything already. You have a career, money, reputation, and dozens of architectural awards lining your shelves. What does Lucas have? He only has this dream." And then she dropped the classic line that has haunted me my entire life. "You are lucky to be blessed with intelligence and opportunity. Share a little of that luck with your brother. Don't be selfish and hoard everything for yourself like that." Luck. I gripped the stem of the wine glass so hard my knuckles turned white. Hot blood rushed to my face. Luck. Does she call 7 grueling years in architecture school, where I fell asleep on drafting tables with fingers stained with ink and calloused from X-Acto knives? Luck. Does she call the sleepless nights studying for the ARE Architect Registration Examination, one of the toughest exams in America, with a failure rate of up to 50% luck? Does she call the fact that I have to fight like a she-wolf in a male-dominated construction industry, where I have to work twice as hard to be recognized half as much as my male colleagues? Luck. Every dollar I earn is soaked in sweat and the sacrifice of my mental health. I suffer from chronic back pain from drawing too much. I suffer from chronic insomnia due to deadline pressure. I don't have luck. I have steel discipline and sacrifices that Lucas will never understand. Lucas has never had to stay up until 4:30 a.m. to fix a structural drawing, for fear the building would collapse. He sleeps in until noon and wakes up with an idea to change the world without lifting a finger to work. I wanted to scream all of that. I wanted to flip this fake dinner table. But I looked into my mother's eyes, those old eyes, brimming with tears, shining with a plea mixed with reproach. It was the look of a mother willing to hurt her strong child to protect her weak one. And my most pernicious habit resurfaced, the habit of buying peace. I was too tired to argue. I was too exhausted after an 80-hour work week to explain the value of labor to them. I just wanted to end this dinner and go home to sleep. "Fine," I exhaled, my voice dropping in resignation. 1 week. Just exactly 1 week. Lucas jumped up, shouting, "Yes! I knew you loved me." But I raised my index finger, my eyes sharp as I looked straight at him. "There are conditions. First, I will keep the keys to the home office and the master bedroom. No one is allowed in there. Second, and most importantly, do not change anything. No drilling, no chiseling, no taping, no painting. The glass cliff is a perfectly balanced structure. Even a small change can affect the building envelope. Oh, come on, you worry too much. Lucas grinned, patting my shoulder. I'm just borrowing the view. I'm not crazy enough to smash up your $1 million house. I'm a businessman, not a demolition crew. My mother smiled with satisfaction, placing a piece of chicken on my plate. See, I knew you were a good sister. Family is supposed to help each other like that. I swallowed that piece of chicken, feeling like I was swallowing a lump of lead. My intuition, that sharp architect's intuition that helps me spot the tiniest hairline cracks in concrete, was screaming a warning. Don't trust them, don't give the keys. But I ignored that voice. I chose to believe in the label of family, which was flimsier than a sheet of paper. I gave Lucas the temporary passcode for the gate, thinking I was doing a good deed. I had no idea that the moment I agreed, I wasn't just lending a house. I had handed them the weapon to destroy me. And Lucas's promise of no smashing was worth about as much as the virtual coins he was peddling, absolutely worthless. 2 days before the launch event, an unsettling premonition that professional intuition that had saved me from countless construction disasters urged me to drive to the glass cliff. Theoretically, I was just going there to check the radiant heating system, a complex hydronic setup beneath the marble floor that I knew Lucas would never figure out how to operate. But deep down, I went because I didn't trust them, and my fear, painfully enough, proved to be correct. As my car turned onto the gravel driveway leading up the cliff, the first thing that struck me wasn't the tranquil beauty of the house blending into nature, but rather a brute chaos. 3 large trucks from some no-name subcontractor were parked arrogantly right on the zoysia grass lawn I had spent thousands of dollars cultivating. The rear doors of the trucks were flung wide open, black cables snaking everywhere like venomous vipers invading territory. But that wasn't even the worst of it. As I stepped out of the car, the ear-splitting shriek of metal cutting into glass rang out, tearing through the quiet late-afternoon air. The sound was like fingernails scratching a chalkboard, but amplified 1,000 times. My heart tightened. I rushed toward the main entrance, forgetting I was in high heels, forgetting my usual composed demeanor. The scene inside the main living room made my blood run cold. The panorama glass wall, a 12-meter masterpiece facing the sea. The very soul of the glass cliff was under attack. It was triple-glazed low-E glass from Germany, custom-ordered from Schuco with thermal insulation and Category 12 hurricane resistance. Each panel was worth $50,000, and its installation required the precision of heart surgery. It was designed to be invisible, to dissolve the boundary between human and ocean. But now, a crew of workmen in dirty protective gear was drilling straight into its load-bearing aluminum frame. They were mounting crude, ugly steel beams onto it to serve as a bracket for a giant LED screen that completely blocked the ocean view. "Stop! Stop immediately!" I screamed, my voice cracking with horror. I rushed forward, yanking the plug of the drill from the hand of the nearest workman. "What the hell are you doing to my house?" The workman jumped back, looking at me in bewilderment. The noise ceased, leaving behind a heavy silence. "Calm down, Elena," Lucas's voice rang out from the bar area. He walked out, holding a scribble-filled sketch, his face showing not a shred of remorse. He looked at me as if I were a child throwing a tantrum in class. "Calm down," I trembled, pointing at the jagged drill holes in the glass frame. "Lucas, do you have any idea what you are doing? This is monolithic tempered glass. If you drill into the load-bearing frame, you alter the surface stress. One strong gust of wind and this entire wall will explode. You are destroying the structural integrity of the house." Lucas rolled his eyes, sighing heavily, then turned to the workmen, signaling them to stay put. He walked closer to me, lowering his voice as if soothing a lunatic. "You always over-technify everything. This is staging. Do you understand? The investors need to see my presentation on a 200-inch screen. That ocean view is nice, sure, but it's distracting. I need them looking at my logo, not at some seagulls." You could use a projector. You could use a portable screen, I snapped. Why are you drilling into the wall? I explicitly said no structural changes. Because projectors aren't bright enough, Lucas yelled back, raising his voice at me for the first time in my own house. You only care about your dry technical specs. You don't understand anything about branding. This is $1 million vision. Elena, you are just a builder. Once you finish building, you leave it for the visionaries to use. Don't bring your blue-collar mindset to lecture a businessman. Builder. He called the chief architect, the person who designed skyscrapers that defined the Seattle skyline, a builder. The contempt in his voice wasn't an outburst of anger. It was his honest opinion. In Lucas's eyes, I wasn't an artist or an engineer. I was just high-end manual labor, the one who creates the shell for geniuses like him to step in and give it a soul. I looked at Lucas, feeling a sense of alienation as if I had never known him. I looked toward the Italian leather sofa where my mother was sitting. She was holding a glass of red wine, a bottle of 1998 Cabernet Sauvignon I had saved in the cellar for my wedding day, and took a sip. She had witnessed everything. She saw the workmen drilling into my wall. She heard Lucas insult my profession. "Mom," I called to her, my voice breaking. "Are you letting him do this? You know how much I cherish this house." My mother set the wine glass down, but she didn't stand up. She looked at me with weary eyes mixed with annoyance. Not annoyance at Lucas, but at me. "Elena, you are overreacting," she said, her voice even and cold. "He's just installing a screen. When he's done, he'll take it down and patch the holes. It's a small thing, and here you are barging in, screaming your head off in front of strangers. You're embarrassing me." "Embarrassing," I repeated, unable to believe my ears. "I protect my property, and you find it embarrassing. Do you know that each of these glass panels costs as much as your entire year's pension?" That sentence was a mistake. I knew it the moment it left my lips. My mother narrowed her eyes. I had touched a nerve, and she immediately switched to attack mode to protect her baby boy. "Money, money. All you ever talk about is money," she said, standing up, stepping between Lucas and me. "You think because you have money, you have the right to look down on your mother and brother? What is the point of building this big, beautiful house if not to serve the family? Lucas is doing big things. If you can't help, then at least don't sabotage him." Then she pointed to the door. A decisive, cruel gesture. "Go home, Elena. You are not calm today. Don't let your brother's guests arrive and see you in this state. It's humiliating. Let him work." Lucas stood with his arms crossed behind Mom's back, smirking triumphantly. "Hear that? Go home, big sis. When I successfully raise capital, I'll buy you 10 other walls." I stood there, in the middle of the magnificent living room I designed myself, surrounded by furniture I hand-picked myself, yet feeling like a homeless intruder. My mother, whose name was on the loan papers I paid off, was kicking me out of my own house. Lucas, the guy who owed me a fortune, was laughing at me on the very floor I paid to pave. Silence enveloped me, drowning out the sound of the rain outside. In that moment, the final curtain of the illusion of family was torn apart. Just like the jagged drill holes in that glass frame, I realized a brutal truth. They don't love me. They never did. They love the convenience I bring. They love the checks I sign. They love the reputation of having a successful sister to brag about to the neighbors. But they don't love Elena. They hate Elena, the real person with principles, standards, and pride. They view me as a cash cow, and when the cow dares to resist and demand rights, they are ready to send it to the slaughterhouse. I looked straight into my mother's eyes one last time. No more pleading, no more anger, only emptiness remained. "Fine," I said, my voice as light as a breath. "I'll go." I turned and walked out the door. No one stopped me. No one apologized. Behind me, the sound of the drill started up again, resuming its destruction. I walked out to my car in the pouring rain, rainwater mixed with the light makeup on my face, but I didn't wipe it away. I sat in the driver's seat, locked the doors tight, sealing myself off from the outside world. I looked back at the glass cliff one last time through the rearview mirror. It still stood there, proud and magnificent, but I knew it had been wounded. just like me. Cracks in glass can be hidden with specialized resin or replaced if you have enough money. But cracks in trust, in these ties of blood and flesh, there is no material on earth that can repair them. I started the car. The engine roared, drowning out the sound of the ocean waves. As the wheels rolled off the gravel road, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was leaving a battlefield where I had lost because I fought with my heart instead of my head. But the war isn't over. I am an architect, and a good architect always knows. When a building has an irreparable systemic failure, the only way to save the site is to demolish it completely and rebuild from scratch. They want me to go. Fine, I'll go. But I'm taking the foundation they are standing on with me. Let's see how long businessman Lucas's sandcastle lasts against the coming storm without this builder. Arthur's office is located in a vintage red brick building in Pioneer Square, where the cobblestone streets still preserve the breath of early 20th century Seattle. In stark contrast to my own light-filled, tech-driven office, Arthur's space carried the hues of old money walls paneled in dark mahogany, the pungent aroma of cigars mixed with the scent of old paper, and the sound of rain tapping against stained glass like a melancholic jazz tune. Arthur wasn't just my father's close friend. He was a legend in the venture capital world of the Northwest, a true shark with a razor-sharp mind hidden behind the polite exterior of a gentleman. Since the day Dad died, Arthur had silently played the role of godfather, a mentor guiding me through the traps of the marketplace. He was the only one who looked at me as an equal partner, not as a financier like my family did. I walked into the room, folding my rain-soaked umbrella. Arthur was standing by the window, holding a glass of scotch, his back turned to me. There were no warm social pleasantries like usual. His silence was so heavy I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner of the room. "You're here," Arthur said, his voice deep and hoarse, without turning around. "Sit down, Elena." I sat in the Chesterfield leather chair opposite his desk. On the glossy ebony surface, there was only one object. A pale yellow folder stamped "Confidential" from a private investigation firm I knew Arthur often used for partner due diligence. Arthur turned around, setting his drink down. His face, already etched with the wrinkles of experience, looked 10 years older today. His gaze upon me wasn't his usual stern look, but one of profound pity, the kind of look one usually reserves for the relatives of the recently deceased. "Do you know why I called you here so urgently?" he asked. "I assume Lucas is causing trouble again." I smiled faintly, trying to maintain my composure. "Is he using your name to boast to investors again? Or does he owe gambling debts?" "I'm used to it. Arthur, I'll write a check." "No, Elena." Arthur cut me off, his voice hardening. "This time, your check won't solve it. And this time, you are not the rescuer. You are the victim." He pushed the folder toward me. "Open it, but brace yourself. What you are about to see will kill whatever last bit of affection you are holding on to." My hands trembled slightly as I touched the folder cover. I flipped to the first page. They were surveillance photos. Lucas was shaking hands with a heavily tattooed man at a seedy bar in the Port District. I recognized the man Marcus the Shark, a notorious loan shark operating under the guise of a shadow credit fund in Seattle. I flipped to the second page, a photocopy of a bridge loan agreement, amount $2,000, $1,000 USD, interest rate 15% per month. But what made my heart stop was the collateral section. The bold text slammed into my eyes, the glass cliff, 4500 Ocean View Drive. What is this?" I stammered, nausea rising in my throat. "How can he mortgage my house? The deed is in my name. I am the sole owner. This is fraud." "What bank would accept this?" "This isn't a bank, Elena. This is shadow banking," Arthur said, his voice cold as a scalpel. "They don't care about standard legal procedures. They care about liquidity." He pointed to the third page. "Look closely at this one. This is a power of attorney and confirmation of inheritance." I looked at the document. It was a sophisticatedly drafted text, claiming that the glass cliff was actually an inheritance from my father, and that I, Elena Vance, was merely a temporary trustee. The document asserted that Lucas was the true beneficiary according to Dad's verbal will, and that the family was in the process of transferring ownership. It was a blatant lie, a disgusting fabrication smearing my father's spirit. But the most horrific part was at the bottom of the page. Under the section Witness and Guarantor, that signature, the soft strokes, slanting slightly to the right, with the hook on the last letter that I had seen thousands of times on report cards, on school communication books, and on old birthday cards. Patricia Vance, my mother. The world around me collapsed, not with a crash like a bombed building, but melting away like wax meeting fire. My ears rang. My mother, the woman I had supported my whole life, the woman for whom I had just bought a new car last month, had signed her name to confirm a fraudulent document to steal my house and give it to Lucas. What? What are they planning to do? I whispered, my voice no longer my own. Arthur walked over and placed a hand on my shoulder. His hand was heavy and warm. Lucas's plan is a pump and dump, Arthur explained ruthlessly. Tomorrow's event isn't to raise capital for any tech company. It's a stage play. He invited investors there to appraise the house, to prove to the creditors that the asset has real value and that he has usage rights. As soon as he gets the $2 million in cash from the Black Fund, he will skip town or blow it on another gamble. And when he defaults, which will inevitably happen, the mob will come to foreclose. They will use this paper to sue, to harass, to force you to sell the house to pay his debt if you want any peace. My mother, does she know? I asked a stupid question. She knows. Arthur nodded. In the recording my detective obtained, Lucas told your mother, Elena is rich. It doesn't matter if she loses this house, but I need capital to restart my life. Just sign it, Mom. Consider it her paying back the debt of raising her. Paying back the debt of raising her, I laughed. A dry, bitter, broken laugh. So that was my value. A piggy bank to be smashed when needed. Maternal love converted into real estate. My sacrifice is considered a default obligation. I closed the folder. The initial intense pain had passed, giving way to total numbness. Like when you cut your finger too deep. Before the blood flows and the pain hits, there is only the shock of the gaping wound. Arthur circled back to his chair, sat down, and looked straight into my eyes. He interlaced his 10 fingers and placed them on the desk. Elena, I am an investor, and I want to tell you the most fundamental principle of economics, the sunk cost fallacy. He paused for a moment to let me absorb every word. Humans have a tendency to continue investing in a failed project simply because they have already poured too much money, time, and emotion into it. They are afraid to let go because they think letting go means losing everything. But in reality, the longer you hold on, the greater the loss. He pointed toward the folder. Your family is a bankrupt project, Elena. You have poured your youth, your money, and your very soul into it. But the return you received is a negative number betrayal, exploitation, and now, a conspiracy to seize assets. You are standing on a precipice. If you continue to play, humans have a tendency to continue investing in a failed project simply because they have already poured too much money, time, and emotion into it, end forward, his eyes burning. My question to you is, do you intend to continue carrying the loss or let it bring down your entire life? Do you want to be a good sister until death or be the CEO of your own life? I looked at Arthur, then looked out at the gray, rainy window. Images of the past years fast-forwarded through my mind. The midnight money transfers, the meals I ate alone, my mother's cold gaze, Lucas's brazenness, and finally, my mother's signature on that mortgage paper. They had sold me out, not out of desperation, but out of greed and selfishness. A shift occurred within me. It was cold and hard like steel tempered in fire. The weak Elena, the girl who always craved affection, always afraid of displeasing others, died right there in that office, in that moment. I stood up, adjusting the lapel of my suit jacket. The trembling sensation vanished completely. I felt taller, sharper. I was no longer a victim. I was the chief architect. And when a contractor commits a serious breach of contract, I don't cry. I file a lawsuit and liquidate the contract. Thank you, Arthur, I said, my voice so calm I surprised myself. You're right. It's time to close the book. What do you plan to do? Arthur asked, a satisfied smile flashing across his lips. They want to play legal and financial games with me. I picked up the folder, gripping it tight. I'll show them the rules of play for professionals. They want $2 million. I will ensure they don't receive a single cent, but the price they have to pay will be far more expensive than that number. I walked to the door, carrying the evidence of betrayal. Outside, the rain was still falling, but I no longer felt cold. The fire of anger in my heart had now turned into a block. It's time to close the book. To demand justice. I was going to execute a sentence. Lucas, Mom, enjoy tonight. Because tomorrow, when the sun rises, you will see the sky fall. The private elevator doors slid open, delivering me straight into the living room of my penthouse. The space inside was utterly silent, a stark contrast to the storm howling outside and the emotional tempest that had just subsided within me. I kicked off my soaked high heels into a corner, my bare feet touching the cold oak floor. An icy chill ran down my spine, but strangely, it didn't make me shiver. It made me lucid. In psychology, there is a state called dissociation. It is the brain's final defense mechanism when a human faces pain too great or a truth too brutal to process immediately. Right now, I was in precisely that state. I felt as if my soul was floating somewhere near the ceiling, looking down at the body of a woman named Elena moving through this room like a pre-programmed machine. I felt no anger. I felt no sadness. I felt nothing at all. Only a vast emptiness and a terrifyingly sharp focus. I walked to the bar and poured a glass of water. No alcohol. I needed the coldest head possible. Arthur was right. The time for emotions had passed. Now was the time for numbers, legal clauses, and technical protocols. The phone in my blazer pocket vibrated again. I took it out, placing it on the glass table. The screen lit up in the dim darkness. It was another message from Mom. Elena, I haven't seen you reply. You confirm you won't be coming. Right. Don't make me worry. Lucas is very stressed preparing. Don't distract him. I stared at the text. Don't make me worry. She wasn't worried about me, the daughter who had just been kicked out of her home and defrauded of her assets. She was worried about Lucas's performance. She was afraid I would appear suddenly like an uninvited guest and expose the flashy lie they were constructing. She was afraid of the truth. Before, if I had received this message, I would have called back immediately. I would have cried, explained, tried to prove that I only wanted what was best for my brother, that I deserved respect. I would have played the victim begging for affection. But that woman died an hour ago in Arthur's office. I picked up the phone. My fingers glided lightly over the virtual keyboard. I didn't type out long-winded justifications. I didn't type bitter reproaches. I typed just 2 words. Brief, concise, and cruel in their own way. That's great. I hit send. Those 2 words were a masterpiece of ambiguity. To them, it meant I had accepted. I had surrendered. I had obediently stepped back to yield the stage to Lucas. They would breathe a sigh of relief. They would raise a toast to celebrating the removal of the final obstacle. But to me, that's great meant great. You just walked right into the trap. This fake compliance would make them lower their guard. It was the sedative I injected into the prey before performing the surgery to excise the tumor. Right after the message was sent, a notification from Instagram popped up. Lucas had just posted a new update. I opened the app. Slamming into my eyes was a photo of Lucas standing on the balcony of the glass cliff, holding a glass. They would raise a toast to celebrate the removal of the final obstacle. Allie, chin raised high, eyes gazing into the distance with the contemplative look of a lonely genius. But what made my stomach churn wasn't the photo, but the caption underneath. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. People only see the glamour of today, but no one sees the sleepless nights, the sweat, and the silent sacrifices to build this empire, proud to be self-made, my house, my rules, my legacy. Self-made, #blockchain vision, the glass cliff. Self-made, my empire, my legacy. He had tagged dozens of celebrities, investment funds, and even our mutual friends. Hundreds of likes and congratulatory comments started jumping up continuously. So admiring, bro. True class. Well-deserved, man. I read every comment, smirking, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Lucas wasn't just stealing my house. He was stealing my identity, my labor, and turning it into jewelry to adorn his hollow ego. He was living in a mirage he wove himself, and my mother was the one pumping helium into that balloon of illusion. But there was one thing Lucas forgot. Social media is a double-edged sword. This post, with the claim of ownership, my house, was ironclad evidence in court that he deliberately impersonated the owner for profit. I took a screenshot. 1 photo, 2 photos, the entire comments section, saved to the evidence folder. I closed the phone and opened my dedicated MacBook Pro. The Retina display shone brightly, displaying the familiar interface of numbers and data. I was no longer a grieving sister. I switched to project manager mode, handling a crisis project. First, I opened the Excel file named Family Expenses Master. And this was a document I had never shown anyone, an infinitely long spreadsheet recording every cent I had spent on this family over the last 15 years. Row 45, paid off Lucas's credit card debt, $12,500. Row 102, bought Lexus for mom, $65,000. Row 215, craft beer, startup investment capital. Total loss, $40,000. Row 340, construction cost of the glass cliff, $4 to $200,000. I scrolled through thousands of rows of data. Each number was a time I skipped a meal, skipped buying clothes, a time I worked overtime. The total sum appearing at the bottom of the spreadsheet was a colossal figure, enough to buy a small island. Before, whenever I looked at this spreadsheet, I felt proud that I had provided for my family. Today, I looked at it and saw only my own stupidity. I wasn't a benefactor. I was an enabler. I had used money to feed their parasitism, but this spreadsheet would now serve a different purpose. It would be the indictment. Next, I opened the Smart Home Management dashboard. The interface flashed red, Admin Rights Disabled. Lucas had changed the password and deleted my account on the mobile app. He thought that was it. He thought technology was just icons on a touchscreen. I opened the terminal, typing the command line to access the root server. The glass cliff didn't just run on Wi-Fi. It had a physical brain located in the basement, directly connected via a high-security local intranet that only I had the encryption access to. My fingers flew across the keyboard, typing familiar lines of code. Access granted. The entire schematic of the house appeared before my eyes as a real-time 3D model. I could see the temperature of every room, the status of every light bulb, and most importantly, the security and fire alarm systems. I saw that Lucas had tripped the breaker for the smoke alarm system in the main living area to use the stage fog machines. A fatal violation. I saw he was wiring an overloaded power source into the sound system, causing the line temperature to rise to a yellow warning level. I could cut the power right now. I could activate the fire sprinklers to soak his Armani suit. But no, that would be too childish. That would just be a prank. I needed a complete takedown, a destruction that was legal and public. I opened my email, composing a new message. Recipient Seattle Fire Department and City Building Inspector. Subject report of serious safety violations and illegal construction activity at 4500 Ocean View Drive. I attached the photos of the drilled glass wall. I attached the system log showing the fire alarm being manually disabled. I even attached a copy of the building permit clearly stating my name as the owner and that no renovation activity had ever been authorized. In the email, I wrote in the cold tone of a model citizen, "I am the legal owner of this property. Currently, a group of individuals are illegally occupying and making dangerous structural changes, threatening the safety of surrounding residents and upcoming event guests. I request immediate intervention from the authorities. I hovered the mouse over the send button, but didn't click immediately. I looked at the clock. It was 10:00 p.m. If I sent it now, the inspectors would arrive tomorrow morning, before the event started. Then Lucas would only face an administrative fine and a canceled event. No. That would be too gentle. Currently, a group of individuals is illegally occupying and making dangerous structural changes, threatening the safety of surrounding residents and upcoming event guests. The most important investors are present. I wanted him to collapse when he was at his highest. I wanted the humiliation to be witnessed by the very people he was trying to impress. I clicked schedule. Done. I closed the laptop. The room plunged back into darkness, with only the faint glow from the city of Seattle outside. I stood up and walked toward the bedroom. Tonight I would sleep soundly, the best sleep in 15 years. Because tomorrow, I wouldn't have to carry anyone anymore. Tomorrow, I would just be a spectator in the tragedy they wrote and directed themselves, and when the velvet curtain falls, there will be no applause. Only the click of handcuffs and the sound of shattering illusions. Seattle. 11:00 p.m. The rain outside showed no sign of letting up, but inside my home office, the air was as dry and silent as the interior of a nuclear bunker. I sat before the computer screen, staring at the access denied notification on the commercial smart home app where Lucas had just gloatingly changed the password. He thought that by kicking me out of the phone app, he had seized control of the house. His naivety made me feel a mix of amusement and pity. Lucas belongs to the generation that believes technology consists of colorful icons on a touchscreen, things they can see and touch, what we tech people call UI, user interface. But he forgot one basic thing: I am not a user. I am the creator. And a creator never builds just one entrance. The glass cliff isn't just a lifeless block of concrete and glass. It is a living organism, operated by a complex central nervous system that I integrated from the moment the foundation was poured. It is an industrial-grade automation system, running on a custom-tailored Crestron platform, with its brain being a physical server located deep in a lead-lined basement, cooled by liquid nitrogen and protected by 2 layers of firewalls, both digital and physical. Lucas can change the Wi-Fi password. He can reset the wall-mounted control panels, but he cannot touch the root layer of the system without my iris scan or the physical master key that only I hold. It's like a child changing the bedroom door lock and thinking he owns the entire building, while I'm holding the blueprints and the master key to the entire utility grid. I opened the terminal on my computer, typing the command to activate the tunneling protocol VPN, connecting directly to the server in the house's basement. Lines of green code cascaded down the black screen, reflecting dancing numbers in my eyes. Connecting to node 0. Verifying biometric hash. Access granted. The true interface of the house appeared. Not pretty graphics, but circuit diagrams, sensor temperatures, and the status of every device in raw data form. I was looking through the soul of my home from 20 miles away, and what I saw caused my facade of calm to crack with concern. A red error light was blinking in Zone 1, the great room. I zoomed in on the sensor data. Lucas, or some amateur electrician he hired, had tampered with the fire alarm system. The status line for the smoke detectors and heat sensors on the 6-meter-high ceiling was displaying disabled, manual override. Why would he turn off the fire alarm system? I switched to the power consumption log. The electrical outlets in the temporary stage area were under a massive load, exceeding the safe design capacity by 40%. He was plugging in something very power-hungry: stage lighting, high-power speaker arrays. And then I understood. Fog machines and possibly cold spark machines for his grand entrance. Lucas wanted to emerge from the mist like a tech god, and to do that without triggering the blaring sirens, he had cut off the eyes and ears that protected the house from fire. A chill ran down my spine. Imagine this scenario: a sealed room with 200 people, ventilation vents blocked by a giant LED screen emitting heat. An electrical system is being overloaded by stage equipment. Alcohol flows freely, and the fire alarm system was completely disabled. Just one spark from the mess of wires his workers had sloppily connected, and a fire would erupt. With no alarm, the fire would spread before anyone noticed. With the airtight glass structure, toxic smoke would not escape but accumulate, turning the glass cliff into a giant gas chamber. That isn't a party. That is a death trap. And who bears the legal liability if a disaster strikes? Who is the name on the building permit and the fire insurance policy? It's me, Elena Vance. If someone gets hurt tomorrow night, or worse, Lucas might go to jail for manslaughter, but I will be sued into bankruptcy for gross negligence as the owner. Insurance companies will deny the claim immediately upon discovering the safety system was manually disabled. Revenge is no longer personal. It has become a matter of legal survival. My mother always told me, don't overreact. Don't make a big deal out of things. But U.S. law doesn't run on feelings. It runs on liability. And I refuse to let my brother's stupidity and my mother's enabling drag me into the abyss of prison. I opened the email editor. This time, I wasn't writing to family. I was writing to those with real power, the Seattle Fire Department, SFD, and the City Department of Construction and Inspections. I began to type, each word sharp as a scalpel. To the Fire Safety Inspection. Captain, I am Elena Vance, the legal owner of the property at 4500 Ocean View Drive. By this letter, I am reporting an urgent situation regarding serious violations of the Life Safety Code NFPA 101 currently occurring at my property without my authorization. Specifically, 1. The central smoke and heat detection system has been illegally disabled. See attached system logs. 2. The west emergency exit has been blocked by temporary stage structures. See schematic. 3. The electrical load is exceeding safe limits, posing a high risk of short-circuiting and fire. 4. The load-bearing glass wall structure has been illegally drilled into, compromising wind and thermal resistance. See attached photos. The event is scheduled to take place at 1900 tomorrow with over 100 attendees. In its current state, this venue is a direct threat to human life. I request an urgent inspection and the implementation of necessary preventive measures. I explicitly disclaim all legal liability regarding any accidents that may occur due to these violations. I attached all the evidence screenshots from the server system, power load charts, and the photos I secretly took this afternoon. This wasn't a snitch letter. This was a complete legal dossier, presented with the precision of an architect who knows every clause of the code. I hovered my mouse over the send button. A flicker of hesitation passed through me. If I send this email, tomorrow's event will be canceled. Police and firefighters will raid the place. Lucas will be humiliated in front of the entire investment world. My mother will never forgive me. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. The image of my mother signing the mortgage papers appeared in my mind. The image of Lucas mocking me, calling me a builder, echoed in my ears. They didn't hesitate to sell me out for $2 million. Why should I hesitate to protect innocent lives and my own career? I'm not playing dirty. I'm just playing by the rules, the very rules they always disregarded because they thought family ties were an immunity card. I set the email priority high, send time tomorrow. 08:00 a.m. Why tomorrow morning? Because I want them to have enough time to receive the notification, but not enough time to fix the violations. When the inspectors arrive at noon, everything will still be in situ wires tangling, alarms off, and the stage blocking the exit. They will be caught red-handed. If I send it now, Lucas might panic and sneakily turn the fire system back on, hiding the evidence. No, I need the inspectors to see the violation at its absolute worst. I clicked Schedule Send. The trap is set, not by blind hatred, but by dry administrative regulations. The numbers, the codes, the safety standards things Lucas always mocked as boring will now become the noose tightening around his neck. I closed my laptop. In the darkness of the penthouse, I felt a strange relief. I am not the villain. I am the enforcer of rules. And in this chaotic world, sometimes rules are the only thing distinguishing civilization from barbarism, between a safe home and a fiery tomb. Tonight, Lucas will dream of radiant glory. As for me, I will sleep soundly knowing I fulfilled my duty as chief architect. Tomorrow, his tower of illusions falls, and I will be the one watching, umbrella in hand, with the law standing behind me. Seattle, the day of the event. 7:45 p.m. November rain in the Pacific Northwest is never romantic. It is a dense, frigid, and ruthless curtain of water, lashing against the earth as if trying to wash away all the city's sins. I sat in my black Range Rover, parked hidden behind a grove of ancient Douglas firs, about 100 meters from the main gate of the glass cliff. The engine was off, leaving only the rhythmic drumming of rain on the roof and the pale blue light emanating from the laptop on my lap. From this vantage point, I could see my house glowing like a giant diamond resting on the pitch-black velvet of the cliff. To a passerby, the sight would be breathtakingly magnificent. Warm yellow light spilled from the glass walls, the ones not yet blocked by the LED screen, piercing through the rain to create a surreal aura. Supercars, McLarens, Porsches, Bentleys lined the gravel driveway like expensive beetles gathering around a lantern. But I am not a passerby, I am the creator, and I am also the one about to bring this stage crashing down. I opened the surveillance software window. The interior of the house appeared in sharp 4K resolution. Lucas had turned my sophisticated minimalist living room into a cheap nightclub floor. Neon blue laser lights swept back and forth, slashing through the inherent tranquility of the architecture. The thumping bass of electronic music reached all the way to my parked car, vibrating like the heartbeat of a dying monster. And there was Lucas. He stood in the center of the room, under a spotlight beaming straight down from the ceiling. He was wearing a charcoal gray Armani suit, a $2,500 birthday gift I gave him last year, hoping he would wear it to interview for a decent job. Now that suit was serving the biggest scam of his life. Lucas held a glass of champagne, a vintage Dom Perignon that I knew for a fact he had stolen from my code-locked wine cellar. His gestures were expansive, exaggerated, his face flushed with excitement and probably alcohol. He was giving a speech. Although I couldn't hear him through the soundproof car glass, I could read his lips and body language. He was talking about the future, about a new era, about a paradigm shift, hollow buzzwords he picked up online, molded to sound dangerous and grand. Camera 3, angled from the bar, showed me my mother. Patricia looked stunning tonight in a navy blue sequined evening gown. She moved through the crowd of guests with the grace of a swan. She smiled, tilted her head, and lightly touched the arms of the gentleman, whispering sweet nothings. I zoomed in on her face. Her eyes sparkled with pride, a toxic pride built on lies. I saw her talking to a real estate investor couple. Her lips moved clearly. Yes, Lucas designed this house himself. He drew the sketches last year. The boy is a genius. He has an innate aesthetic eye. Nausea rose in my throat. Lucas designed it himself. She wasn't just denying my effort. She was erasing my existence from the masterpiece of my life. She was willing to hand the architect's crown to a son who had never held a ruler, just to make him look valuable in the eyes of outsiders. The lie was so smooth, I wondered if she had hypnotized herself into believing it. But the audience for this play wasn't naive. Scattered on the Italian leather sofas were the investors, the old wolves from Silicon Valley and Seattle. They weren't like Lucas's Playboy friends. They wore simple but expensive business attire, their eyes cold as scalpels. They sat there, holding wine glasses but rarely drinking. They observed. I noticed a man sitting apart in the corner. It was Elias Sterling, the tycoon behind a series of luxury resorts on the West Coast. He wasn't looking at Lucas. He was looking up at the ceiling, where the exposed, load-bearing steel beams intersected to form a perfect geometric grid. He narrowed his eyes, seemingly evaluating the structure, or perhaps wondering how a tech genius could design such a complex structure. Sterling's gaze was full of suspicion. He smelled the fakery, and not just Sterling. In the left corner of the screen, near the entrance, I saw two strangers. They wore leather jackets, looking rough and out of place amidst the elite crowd. They didn't drink, didn't laugh. They glued their eyes on Lucas like vultures waiting for a carcass. Those were Marcus, the Shark's men, Lucas's creditors. They came to watch over the $2 million investment about to be disbursed. Lucas was dancing on a wire, and below him was an abyss full of thorns. The dashboard clock clicked to 19:55. 5 minutes left. According to the event schedule I hacked from Lucas's email, Exactly at 8:00 p.m. would be the moment of the signing. Lucas would sign a symbolic Memorandum of Understanding MOU with a small venture capital fund, actually a shell company for money laundering or show, and then the LED screen would count down to launch his token on the exchange. That is also when he thinks he has won. I watched Lucas set his glass down. He adjusted his tie, stepping onto the small stage erected right in front of the blocked glass wall. Applause erupted. My mother stood in the front row, clapping the most enthusiastically, her face beaming as if she had just given birth to him a second time. Inside the car, the silence was suffocating. Only the faint whirring of the laptop's cooling fan could be heard. I opened the terminal window, where the command line override system was blinking, the cursor waiting. My finger hovered over the enter key. Do I feel guilty? I asked myself that question one last time. I looked at my mother, the woman who signed her name to sell me out. I looked at Lucas, the man standing on a pedestal built with my blood, sweat, and tears. I looked at the house, my spiritual child being abused by their noise and brutality. No, I don't feel guilty. I only feel clarity. If I let tonight pass smoothly, Lucas gets the money. He will continue to lie, continue to borrow, and eventually drag the whole family into the black mud when the bubble bursts. My mother will lose all her retirement assets because of that guarantee paper, and I will lose my professional reputation when the house is foreclosed on. To save a necrotic body, sometimes a doctor must perform a painful amputation. I am that surgeon, and this is my scalpel. The clock turned to 1958. On the screen, Lucas held the microphone. He said something that made the crowd laugh. He pointed to the giant LED screen behind him. The countdown clock on the screen displayed 1:59. 2 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, Lucas shouted into the mic, raising a fist in victory. 2 minutes to change history. That's right, Lucas, I whispered in the darkness of the car. 2 minutes to change history. But not the way you think. I didn't wait until the last second. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of reaching the finish line. I wanted to cut the rope while he was dangling at the highest point. I placed my finger on the enter key. The cold sensation of the plastic key was transmitted through my fingertip. End the show! I pressed down hard. A decisive click rang out, sharp as the sound of a gun cocking. Lines of code raced down the screen. The signal was transmitted at the speed of light, piercing through the rain, burrowing underground, entering the central server of the glass cliff. Instantly, on the surveillance camera screen, everything changed. The brilliant crystal chandelier in the living room went dark. The giant LED screen behind Lucas flickered and then went pitch black. The music died. For a brief second, the entire house was plunged into absolute darkness, leaving only the weak glow of mobile phones and the jagged flashes of lightning outside. Silence enveloped the crowd, who were now in utter confusion. And then, in the next second, hell rose up. The emergency alarm system I had just remotely activated began to roar. Not a standard fire alarm bell. It was a level 1 emergency evacuation siren, a piercing, relentless sound designed to induce panic and force humans to flee by instinct, simultaneously. The emergency red strobe lights' industrial-grade warning lights began to flash continuously with intense brightness. The entire villa transformed into a disco of bloody chaos. Flash, flash, flash. Through the infrared camera, I saw the crowd start shoving each other. Elegant gentlemen knocked over chairs. Ladies dropped their wine glasses. Screams began to rise, merging with the ear-splitting sirens. Lucas stood frozen on the stage, arms hanging limp, his face pale white under the flashing red light. He looked around, bewildered like a lost child in a battlefield. He didn't understand what was happening. He thought it was a technical glitch. But I knew this was just the prelude. From a distance, the distinctive wailing sirens of fire trucks and police cars were echoing, getting closer, tearing through the Seattle night rain. The uninvited guests I had sent invitations to the fire department and the building inspector were arriving to attend the party. And they wouldn't be bringing flowers or gifts. They were bringing citations and handcuffs. I leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes for a moment to savor the sound of justice being served. The curtain has fallen. Now it is time for the truth to speak. Seattle, 8:05 p.m. If hell had a color, tonight it wore the crimson red of emergency strobe lights. If collapse had a sound, it was the ear-splitting roar at 110 decibels, tearing through the eardrums of everyone present inside the glass cliff. The moment my finger pressed enter, the fake, glamorous world inside the house shattered. There was no buffer, no gentle warning. The system switched states from party mode to critical danger in a millisecond. The crystal chandeliers cut out instantly, giving way to dozens of red strobe lights mounted along the ceiling and corridors, which began flashing maniacally. The stroboscopic effect turned every human movement inside into jerky, distorted motions, like puppets with cut strings in a fast-forwarded horror movie. And then, my voice rang out. It wasn't the voice of an angry sister. It was a pre-programmed recording, broadcast through the high-end Bowers & Wilkins ceiling speakers, cold, emotionless, and full of authority. Warning, warning. Critical structural integrity violation detected at West Glass Wall Sector. Fire suppression system manually disabled. Level 1 fire hazard. Evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. The announcement repeated every 5 seconds, interspersed with the distinctive whoop whoop of the evacuation siren. My voice, echoing from every corner, was like the ghost of the true owner rising to reclaim sovereignty. From inside the car, I watched panic explode on my laptop screen. The elite crowd, who just seconds ago were raising toasts, now disintegrated into selfish individuals scrambling for an exit. Survival instinct kicked in, wiping away the mask of civilization. Expensive wine glasses crashed onto the marble floor, shattering. A lady in a sequined dress slipped on a puddle of spilled wine, but no one stopped to help her up. They shoved each other, jostling toward the main entrance, the only exit they knew. But the real disaster didn't stop there. From the driveway leading to the villa, the wailing sirens of emergency vehicles tore through the rain curtain. The blue and red lights of the police and fire department merged with the glowing red alarm lights inside the house, creating a light show of enforcement. 3 Seattle Fire Department SFD trucks and 2 vehicles from the building inspection team screeched to a halt in front of the gate, blocking any escape attempts by the supercars trying to make a U-turn. Doors flew open. Firefighters in rain-soaked protective gear and police officers with grim faces rushed toward the house. They weren't coming to the party. They were coming because they received a report of a death trap. I zoomed in on camera 1, pointed straight at the stage. Lucas was still standing there. He stood frozen, petrified in the eye of the storm. The microphone had dropped from his hand moments ago, creating a piercing audio feedback screech every time someone stepped on the cable. His face, under the flashing red lights, looked ghastly white, his eyes wide, staring into the void. He didn't understand. His brain, accustomed only to the rosy scenarios he painted for himself, couldn't process this reality. Why did the lights go out? Why was there a structural violation notice? Why were the police here? Minutes ago, he was the king of blockchain. Now, he was just a frightened child standing on an illegal stage, watching his sandcastle being swept away by a tsunami. His helplessness was vividly displayed. He had no command presence. He didn't know how to handle a crisis. He only knew how to stand there waiting for someone to save him, waiting for me, as always. But this time, the only rescue team appearing was a burly fire captain, striding straight toward him, holding a thermal imaging device. Camera 3 captured the most dramatic scene. My mother, Patricia. Unlike the paralyzed Lucas, my mother reacted with the anger of denial. She refused to accept this reality. She rushed out to block the captain's path, arms spread wide like a mother hen protecting her chick, disregarding her evening gown now soaked by the rain blowing in from the wide-open main doors. Through the security camera microphone, I clearly heard her screaming over the siren, "Stop! What are you people doing? Who gave you permission to barge in here?" The captain, a middle-aged man with a stern beard, stopped but didn't flinch. He flipped up his visor, speaking loudly to be heard over the noise. "Ma'am, we received an urgent report regarding fire safety and structural violations. I need you and everyone to evacuate immediately. This area is unsafe." False report. Who reported it? My mother screamed, pointing a finger straight at the officer's face. This is my son's house. Lucas Vance. He is the owner here. We are hosting a private party. You are trespassing. I will sue. I will call my lawyer. Your son's house? The captain furrowed his brow, pulling an inspection warrant from his waterproof pocket. Land registry records show the owner is Ms. Elena Vance, and she is the one who submitted the evidence reporting the disabled fire alarm system. The name Elena Vance struck the living room like a lightning bolt. My mother froze. Her face turned from beet red to ashen gray. She turned her head to look at Lucas, then looked around the chaotic room. She realized the voice broadcasting on the speakers wasn't a computer voice. It was mine. Elena, she whispered, but then rage flared up again. This time the rage of someone betrayed. That ungrateful bitch. She dared to sabotage her brother. Meanwhile, in other corners of the room, the play ended in different ways. The tycoon Elias Sterling, the man Lucas desperately wanted to impress, had stood up moments ago. He didn't run. He calmly placed his wine glass on the table, adjusted his suit jacket, and looked around with the appraising eye of an expert. He looked up at the ceiling where the alarm lights were flashing, then at the glass wall blocked by the dark LED screen. He shook his head a slight shake, but one containing supreme contempt for this amateurism. He pulled out his phone, called his driver, and walked straight out the door, not bothering to look back at the genius Lucas even once. Near the entrance, Marcus the Shark's 2 men, the loan sharks, were also retreating. They didn't want to run in with the police. But before leaving, one turned back, staring dead at Lucas and drawing a thumb across his throat. A silent message. You don't have the money to pay. You're dead meat. Lucas remained standing there, trembling. Only when the captain stepped onto the stage and snatched the broken microphone from his hand did he snap out of it. But I turned off the fire alarm, Lucas stammered, uttering the stupidest sentence possible, a confession right in front of the authorities. Did you just admit to turning off the fire alarm? The captain glared. He turned to the accompanying police officer. Log that. Willful disablement of public safety equipment. Violation of Washington State Penal Code, Article 9A. Outside the car, I sat back in the plush leather seat, observing it all. I felt like a conductor leading a symphony of collapse. The sirens were the percussion, the screams were the choir, the stampeding footsteps were the rhythm, and Lucas's deathly silence was the most perfect rest note. I didn't feel childish glee. I felt the profound satisfaction of order being restored. In nature, when a rotting tree is hollowed out by termites, the storm that knocks it down isn't cruel. It is purification. The glass cliff was being purified of the parasites clinging to it. I checked my watch. 8:15 p.m. Act 1, Destruction of Illusion, complete. Act 2, The Arrival of Reality, begin. I closed the laptop, unplugging the connection cable. I adjusted my white shirt collar, donning my perfectly tailored black blazer. I grabbed my long, wooden-handled black umbrella. It was time for the true mistress of the house to appear and clean up this rubble. I wouldn't walk in there as a grieving sister. I would walk in as a nemesis. I opened the car door. Cold wind and rain lashed at my face, but I didn't feel the cold. My blood was running hot with the adrenaline of power. I opened the umbrella. A decisive thud rang out. My high heels clicked rhythmically on the wet gravel road. Every step was an assertion of sovereignty. I walked through the crowd of guests fleeing in panic toward the gate. They looked at me, the only woman walking against the flow, calm and cold with eyes full of curiosity and fear. They parted from me like water parting before the bow of an icebreaker. Ahead, the police car's headlights cast my shadow long across the ground, reaching straight for the main door of the glass cliff. I was home. Seattle, 8:05 p.m. The Seattle night rain seemed to grow heavier, pouring down like silver needles, tearing through the night. Standing before the granite archway of the glass cliff, I unfurled my long, wooden-handled black umbrella, a gesture as decisive and clean as a swordsman drawing his blade from its sheath. I did not enter my home as a late guest, nor as a relative rushing in to save the day. I entered like a cold tide, unstoppable and carrying not a shred of compassion. Unlike the guests fleeing in the opposite direction, their magnificent evening gowns soaked and stained with mud, I wore a bespoke jet-black business suit tailored in London, hugging my frame, yet exuding a rigid authority. My white shirt collar stood stiff and sharp. My stiletto heels clicked against the wet gravel road with a steady, steely rhythm. Click, click, click. The sound pierced through the chaotic noise, like the gavel of a judge striking the bench. The stream of people, investors, opportunists, Lucas's social friends automatically parted to the sides to make way for me. They didn't know who I was, but their survival instinct told them that the woman walking calmly through the storm and police lights held the real power here. I saw Elias Sterling sheltering from the rain under the eaves, waiting for his car. He recognized me. A slight, discreet, and meaningful nod from the real estate tycoon was directed at me. It was a nod of validation. You did what needed to be done, but not everyone maintained that clarity. "Elena! You bitch!" A gut-wrenching scream rang out from the front steps. Lucas rushed out of the house, hair disheveled, his soaked Armani suit clinging to his body, revealing a frame shivering from cold and insane rage. His face was beet red, distorted, his eyes bloodshot with desperation. He saw me, the sister who always stood behind him, cleaning up his messes, now standing tall, dry, and pristine while his world collapsed. That contrast was a slap to his fragile ego. "You ruined me. You did this." Lucas charged down the stairs, slipping and nearly falling, but still lunging toward me, hands raised to grab my collar. "You're jealous of me. You're afraid I'll be more successful than you. How dare you?" I didn't step back. I didn't even blink. Just as Lucas's fingers were half a meter from me, an arm as solid as cold steel barred his chest, shoving him violently backward. It was Carl, the head of the private security team I had hired on Arthur's advice. Carl stood nearly 2 meters tall, clad in a black raincoat, towering like an insurmountable fortress wall. Lucas stumbled and fell backward into a muddy puddle on the walkway. Dirty water splashed onto his expensive suit, onto the smudged face of the genius businessman. He looked up, mouth agape in shock to see me protected, not by him, but by strangers against him. I stopped, tilting my umbrella to shield myself, leaving Lucas sitting exposed in the rain. I looked down at him, not with anger, not with pity. It was the gaze of an inspection engineer that gave a block of defective concrete before signing the demolition order, emotionless, evaluating, and discarding. "Jealous?" I asked back, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the sound of the rain. "Lucas, I am not jealous of someone who has to steal his sister's house to cosplay as a rich man. I feel embarrassed for you." "This is my house. Mom signed it," Lucas screamed, his voice shattering like glass. "You're just a domineering woman. I'll sue you. I will." I didn't let him finish. I turned my back, continuing to walk toward the police chief and the fire captain who were directing the scene right in front of the main entrance. That act of turning away was crueler than any slap. To me, right now, Lucas no longer existed as an opponent. He was just background noise. Seeing me approach, the fire captain, the one who had ordered the evacuation earlier, turned around. He saw my demeanor, saw Carl following closely for protection, and he understood immediately who I was. "Are you Elena Vance?" he asked, his voice grave. "Yes, Captain," I replied, my voice shifting to a professional, articulate tone. I tucked the umbrella against one shoulder, opened the Hermes briefcase in my hand, and pulled out a plastic-wrapped waterproof folder. I handed it to the police chief standing nearby. "Officer, this is the title deed for the land and attached assets bearing my name, Elena Vance, issued by King County. Attached are the original building permit and the technical schematics of the house." The police chief took it, shining his flashlight on the bright red official seals. He nodded in confirmation. "And this," I pulled out a second sheet, "is the list of authorized residents. As you can see, there is only my name. I never authorized this event, nor did I ever authorize anyone to alter the structural integrity of the house. I jerked my chin toward Lucas, who was scrambling up from the mud, and my mother, who had just run out, standing frozen as she watched me converse with the police. These people, I pointed at them, avoiding the word family, avoiding mom or brother, are committing criminal trespassing. They have committed vandalism on property estimated at $4 million by drilling into load-bearing walls and disabling public safety systems. My mother heard those words. She swayed as if about to faint, clutching a marble pillar. "Elena," she gasped, her voice trembling and weak. "What are you saying? Criminal trespassing. I am your mother. This is my son's house." I turned to look at her. For the first time tonight, our eyes met directly. Her eyes were wide, full of shock and fear. She was looking for the obedient, soft-hearted daughter of the past. But that daughter was no longer here. Standing before her was the creditor of her life. "Mrs. Patricia," I addressed her, cold and distant. "There is no section in the legal records that says your son's house. There is only the property of Elena Vance, and the people attempting to illegally seize it." I turned back to the officer, my voice hard as the stamp closing a verdict. "I request that you enforce the law. Please remove all trespassers from my property. And I want a crime scene report filed immediately to serve as evidence for a damages lawsuit." "Are you sure, Ms. Vance?" the police chief asked, glancing at the crying older woman and the frantic young man. "This appears to be a civil domestic dispute." "No, officer." I cut him off, my eyes burning as I looked straight at him. "When they forge signatures to mortgage my house to the black market, and when they disable a fire system threatening the lives of hundreds, it is no longer civil, it is criminal. And I will press charges to the fullest extent." My ferocity convinced him. Or perhaps the logical cruelty in how I handled my own flesh and blood made him understand there was no room for reconciliation here. "Understood." The chief nodded. He signaled to two subordinate officers. "Please escort all individuals not listed as owners off the premises immediately." Two officers moved toward Lucas and my mother. "No, let me go. This is my house," Lucas screamed, struggling as the police grabbed his arms to lead him away. "Elena, you'll pay for this. I'll kill you." That threat echoed in the rainy night, but it was meaningless. It was just the whimper of a wounded beast that had lost its claws. My mother didn't resist. She let the police guide her away. Her eyes glazed over, staring at me as if looking at a stranger who had just stepped out of hell. I stood still, under the sturdy black umbrella, watching them being escorted out of my gate. The rain lashed against my face, freezing cold, but inside my chest, a warm fire of freedom was beginning to kindle. I had reclaimed the house, but more importantly, I had reclaimed myself. I turned, stepping up the 3 stairs. The 4-meter-high oak doors stood wide open before me, revealing the devastated scene inside the floor covered in broken glass, spilled wine, and dangling wires. My house was wounded. It was bleeding. "Don't worry," I whispered to the walls, my hand lightly touching the cold stone cladding. "Mommy's home. We'll fix everything." My appearance was not a performance. It was a reassertion of sovereignty, and tonight, the glass cliff would be scrubbed clean, starting with the stains named family. And the Seattle night rain seemed determined to drown the entire world, but inside the foyer of the glass cliff, a fiercer storm was raging. The flashing red lights of the alarm system had been deactivated on my order, returning the space to the cold white glare of police flashlights and the backup chandeliers that had just been reactivated. That light no longer held the romantic, shimmering quality of the party's start. It was operating room lighting, naked and cruel, illuminating every stain, every shard of broken glass, and every face pale with fear. As the police began to escort Lucas toward the door, a desperate chaos erupted. My mother, Patricia, the woman who had spent her life maintaining an image of patrician elegance, suddenly discarded it all. She was no longer a mother, no longer Mrs. Vance. She transformed into a she-beast, trying to protect her weak cub from the fangs of a predator. "No, you can't take him." "Let him go." She struggled free from the loose grip of a young officer, lunging straight at me. Her high heels made her stumble on the marble floor slick with wine and rainwater, but she still charged with a frenzied strength. She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging deep into the thick fabric of my blazer, piercing through to my skin. "Elena, why are you so cruel?" she screamed, tears mixing with mascara running in black streaks down her powdered cheeks. "He is your own brother. He is your flesh and blood. Are you really going to send your brother to prison? You're crazy. You are his sister." Flesh and blood. Those two words again. For 34 years of my life, the words flesh and blood were the invisible chain binding me to responsibility, to sacrifice, to bowing my head to clean up the trash they threw around. Flesh and blood was the reason I paid gambling debts. Flesh and blood was the reason I bought Mom a car. And now she used flesh and blood as a final weapon to stab at my conscience, hoping to find a shred of weakness left. But she was mistaken. My heart right now was no longer a muscle capable of trembling. It was a structure of cured concrete. I looked down at the hand clutching my arm. The hand that used to brush my hair when I was little, the very same hand that held the pen to sign the mortgage papers, selling out my house and my future to loan sharks in exchange for $2 million for Lucas. I didn't answer her immediately. Slowly, deliberately. I used my other hand to peel her fingers off me one by one. My movements were decisive and cold, like an engineer removing a defective brick from a perfect wall. No anger, no rough shoving, simply removing a foreign object not permitted to exist on my body. "Mrs. Patricia," I said, my voice so deep and steady it made her freeze. "You are right. He is my brother, but you and he were the ones who forgot that when you forged my signature. When you held the pen to sign away my house, did you remember I was your daughter, or was I just a name on a title deed to you?" My mother gasped, her breath catching. She didn't expect I knew about that. Their secret lie had been stripped bare by me. She turned her head to look around. In the devastated living room, about 20 people still lingered. These were the most formidable investors, including Elias Sterling and his legal team. They hadn't left yet, not because of the rain, but because they wanted to see how this drama would end. They were business people. They needed to know the truth. Noticing the crowd's gaze, my mother's instinct for saving face kicked in. She let go of me, turning toward the investors, trying to force a distorted, pathetic smile to salvage a shred of dignity. She raised her hands, her voice trembling but attempting to sound normal. "Gentlemen, apologies for this chaos. This is just a misunderstanding. It's an internal family matter. My daughter—" Elena is agitated. "She has psychological issues. She gets jealous of her brother, so she overreacts. Lucas is fine. The project is still good. Please don't go." She was gaslighting a room full of the sharpest minds in Seattle. She dared to call me mentally unstable inside the very house I designed. This brazenness had crossed the line of human morality. Lucas, now handcuffed and standing by the door, screamed in agreement, "That's right. She's crazy. She hacked the system to sabotage me. I will sue. Sterling, sir, please believe me. I will explain everything tomorrow." Elias Sterling stood silently by the extinguished fireplace. He didn't look at Lucas. He looked at me. His gaze seemed to be waiting. He was waiting to see how the true owner would handle these parasites. I knew I couldn't stay silent. If I stayed silent, their lies would become an alternative truth in tomorrow's rumors. I needed to nail this truth down, permanently. I took a step forward, separating myself from my mother, standing in the center of the ruined room. I adjusted my blazer collar, stood up straight, radiating the power aura of a CEO conducting a shareholder meeting. "Ladies and gentlemen," I spoke up, my voice resonant, clear, cutting through all the noise. "There is no misunderstanding here, and there is certainly no internal family matter." I signaled toward the door. Carl, my bodyguard, walked in with a man in a gray suit. It was Mason, the attorney of record Arthur had introduced to me, who had been waiting in the car all this time. In Mason's hand was a thick briefcase. Mason opened the case, taking out copies of the confidential dossier I had seen at Arthur's office. He walked to each group of investors, showing them the evidential papers. "What you are seeing," I continued, looking straight at Lucas, "is evidence of organized financial fraud. This man named Lucas Vance does not own this house. He also does not own any blockchain technology. He used a false identity to mortgage my property, this house, the Glass Cliff, to a shadow credit organization to borrow $2 million. And he intended to use your investment money tonight to pay the interest on that loan before fleeing." Murmurs began to rise. The investors flipped through the files. They saw the predatory loan contract. They saw the forensic analysis of the forged signature. And this woman, I pointed at my mother, who was shrinking like a deflated balloon, Mrs. Patricia Vance, our biological mother, is an accomplice. She signed as the guarantor for that fraudulent loan, fully knowing it would push me into homelessness and bankruptcy. "No, that's not it." My mother protested weakly, but no one was listening to her anymore. I walked closer to Elias Sterling. He was holding the DNA analysis paper of the signature. I looked straight into his eyes. "Mr. Sterling, you understand best the value of a foundation. Lucas invited you here, promising a technological castle, but in reality, he was only selling you a pile of sand built on stolen land. He drilled into the load-bearing walls of my home to install that screen, disregarding your safety, just to cover up the hollowness inside." Sterling slowly looked up. His face hardened. As a self-made billionaire, the thing he hated most wasn't failure, but fraud. He looked at Lucas handcuffed at the door. His gaze contained no anger, but supreme contempt, the kind reserved for a filthy pest. In Sterling's hand was the glass of wine he had held since the beginning of the party. He looked at the wine, then at Lucas. "You said this was vintage 1998, Sterling asked, his voice deep and dangerous. Lucas stammered, Yes, sir." Sterling smirked faintly. He tilted his hand. Crash. The crystal glass fell onto the stone floor, shattering right at his feet. The red wine spur. He looked at Lucas. "Handcuffed at the door," Sterling said coldly. "You are not a businessman, boy. You are just a petty thief in a suit." That sentence was the death penalty for Lucas's career. In front of the entire Seattle investment community, Lucas Vance was officially erased. No one would dare do business with him. No fund would pour capital into him. The label scammer would follow him to the grave. Lucas hung his head, sobbing loudly. Not tears of remorse, but tears of utter humiliation. My mother collapsed onto the floor, covering her face and crying, not daring to look anyone in the eye. The other investors, one by one, threw the files onto the tables or the floor, turning their backs to leave. They stepped over my mother and Lucas, as if stepping over piles of trash blocking the way. No one said goodbye. Their silence was more terrifying than 1,000 curses. Within 5 minutes, the magnificent living room was empty. Only I, Mason, Carl, and the police processing the arrest remained. I stood watching Lucas being shoved into the police van. He turned to look at me one last time, his eyes full of the other investors. One by one, threw the files onto the tables or the floor, turning their backs to leave. "The only reason I only called the police to arrest you for vandalism and trespassing, and haven't sued you for grand larceny and asset misappropriation yet. Thank that bloodline, because it just saved you from 20 years in federal prison. But don't expect me to save you from the creditors." The police van door slammed shut, locking Lucas and his delusions into the darkness. My mother still sat there, on the cold floor, amidst broken glass and wine. She looked up at me, eyes swollen, pleading, "Elena, what should I do? Where do I go now?" I looked at her. This woman had once been my entire world, but now she was just a stranger I used to know. "You have a car, Mrs. Patricia," I said, turning my back to walk toward the stairs. "And you still have the old house. Go back there and pray. Because tomorrow, when Lucas's creditors come looking for the guarantor, you're going to need more than lies to keep a roof over your head." I walked upstairs, leaving her sitting there in her own solitude. The play had ended. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one staying behind to clean up the stage. The wailing siren of the police cruiser carrying Lucas faded behind the curve of towering Douglas firs, leaving behind a streak of red light smeared across the wet asphalt. Along with it, the delusions of a billion-dollar tech empire dissipated into the night, leaving only heavy silence and the sound of drizzling rain. But my mother's tragedy didn't end there. It had only just begun. Patricia stood in the windy foyer, her evening gown stained with mud, her makeup washed away to reveal the wrinkles of old age and fear. As the vehicle carrying the golden child disappeared, the shock within her transformed into a frenzied rage. She whipped around to face me, eyes burning with hateful fire. "Are you satisfied?" she screamed, her voice hoarse. "You just sent your brother to prison. You destroyed his future. I will sue you, Elena. I will hire the best lawyer in Seattle to sue you for defamation. I will take back this house and make you pay for every single one of his tears." I looked at her, feeling a cold pity. She still didn't understand. She still thought she was living in a soap opera where she was the suffering mother with moral authority. She didn't know she was standing in the middle of a brutal legal document of the real world. "Sue me?" I asked, my voice calm. "With what funds? Mother, do you intend to use your pension or the proceeds from selling the old house in the suburbs?" "That is my money. How I use it is my right," she shouted. I shook my head slightly, then turned toward the shadows where my Range Rover was parked. The door opened, and Arthur stepped out. He wore a long ash-gray trench coat, holding a black umbrella, walking slowly but with dignity. The presence of Arthur, Dad's old friend, the keeper of the family's financial secrets, made my mother freeze. "Arthur," she stammered, you are taking her side too." Arthur didn't answer. He walked up beside me, opened his leather briefcase, and pulled out an original document with a red notary seal and a fresh signature in blue ink. He handed it to my mother. "You should read this carefully. Patricia," Arthur said, his voice somber but decisive. "Before you plan on hiring a lawyer." My mother tremblingly took the paper under the flashlight beam of the remaining police officer. It was the loan guarantee agreement she had signed for Lucas 2 weeks ago. "Do you remember what Lucas told you to sign?" I asked, stepping closer to her, each step slow like the countdown of a time bomb. "He told you it was just an administrative formality to confirm inheritance, right? He told you that you just needed to sign as a show of faith, correct?" My mother looked up, her eyes wavering. So what? It was just a formality." "No, Mother," I cut her off, pointing to the fine print in Clause 4. "This is an unconditional personal guarantee. By this signature, you agreed to pledge all your current assets, including the old house, your retirement savings account, and the Lexus I bought you as collateral for Lucas's $2 million loan." I looked straight into her eyes, delivering the finishing blow. And Clause 5 clearly states, in the event the principal borrower, Lucas, loses solvency or becomes entangled in legal issues, the repayment obligation immediately transfers to the guarantor. Lucas was just arrested. His phantom project has collapsed, meaning he has defaulted, and his creditor isn't a gentle state bank, Mother, it's Marcus the Shark. He doesn't care if Lucas is in jail or in Hawaii. He only cares about who has assets to seize. "What do you mean?" My mother stepped back, the paper slipping from her hand, floating down into a puddle. "I mean," I said, my voice ice cold, "the old house filled with Dad's memories. Gone. The retirement fund you saved all your life. Gone. Even the car you drove here tonight. Lucas was just arrested. His phantom project has collapsed, meaning he has defaulted. Child. And now, you have suffered a total loss." My mother stood dead silent. The information hit her like a tsunami, washing away her last shred of pride. She stared blankly into the void, mouth moving but unable to form words. She realized that her blind indulgence hadn't just destroyed Lucas. She had personally signed the death warrant for her own old age. She would have no home to return to. She would become homeless, carrying the burden of her precious son's massive debt. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the cold stone floor, right atop the shards of glass from the wall her son had destroyed. She burst into tears, not the angry screams from before, but the sobbing, pathetic wailing of someone who had lost everything. "Save me, Elena. Save me," she moaned, reaching her hand toward me. I looked at that hand, the hand that had pushed me away for 15 years. The hand that signed her name to sell me out. "I can't save you anymore," I said, my voice light as air. "I am an architect. I only fix structurally unsound buildings. I cannot fix human greed. You chose Lucas. Now let his shadow shelter you." I turned my back, signaling to Arthur. We walked away, leaving her sitting there in her own ruins. But just as I took a few steps, a deep, commanding voice rang out from the shadows near the fireplace. "An impressive performance, Ms. Vance." I started, turning around. Elias Sterling hadn't left yet. The Silicon Valley real estate tycoon was standing there, hands in his dress pants pockets, his sharp eyes looking at me with amusement. He stepped over the debris, approaching me. "Mr. Sterling." I nodded in greeting, regaining my professional composure. "I apologize that you had to witness this messy scene. I hope it didn't ruin your evening." "Ruin," Sterling chuckled, shaking his head. "On the contrary, I came here hearing rumors of a breakthrough in blockchain technology. But what I found was far more interesting." "Chat." He stopped in front of me, looking up at the ceiling, where the fire sensor bars were still blinking their status lights, waiting for a reset. "I observed your warning system," Sterling said, his voice shifting to the serious tone of an expert. "The way you integrated heat sensors with the automatic door locking system, the way you programmed the evacuation protocol through light and sound. It is not an off-the-shelf system. It is a highly intelligent, custom-built design. And more importantly, the way you handled the crisis just now. Cold, precise, and in absolute compliance with safety codes." He pulled a black metal business card from his blazer pocket, laser engraved with his name and a minimalist logo. He presented it to me with two hands, a gesture of respect he hadn't shown Lucas all evening. "I am launching the Obsidian Project, a $50 million eco-resort in Big Sur. I fired 3 design directors because they only knew how to draw things that looked pretty but were hollow. I need someone with the head of an engineer and the heart of an artist. Someone who knows how to build a fortress, not just a sandcastle." He looked straight into my eyes, his gaze burning with challenge. "I need a design director, full authority. You propose your own salary. Are you interested?" I held the business card in my hand. It was cold and heavy, the feeling of real metal, of real value, a poetic irony. Lucas invited these people here, using my house as a backdrop to scam them, hoping to make a few $1,000,000 through lies. In the end, he lost everything. And I, the one banned from the party, the one considered a builder, was the one receiving the highest recognition. They didn't choose me because I was an heir. They chose me for my competence, for my intellect, for my ruthless integrity. I looked up at Sterling, a genuine smile, a smile of professional pride blooming on my lips. "We will need to discuss risk insurance clauses." "Mr. Sterling," I replied, tightening my grip on the card, "I have very strict standards regarding safety." Sterling laughed out loud, the sound echoing through the main hall. "That is exactly what I wanted to hear. Call me tomorrow morning. Elena." He nodded to Arthur, then turned to walk to his car, leaving me standing there. The rain had begun to cease. The air after the storm was unusually clear and crisp. I took a deep breath, tasting the salt of the sea breeze and the scent of freedom. Beneath my feet lay shattered glass. Behind me was the wailing of the mother who betrayed me. But in my hand was the ticket to a future I would build with my own hands. Lucas wanted to use the glass cliff to shine. In the end, it became the tomb burying his career, but the launch pad propelling me to new heights. It was the fairest sentence the universe could pronounce. And I, Elena Vance, was both the judge and the victor. 6 months have passed since that fateful stormy night. Seattle is now entering the most brilliant days of early summer. The sky is no longer a gloomy gray, but a deep, piercing cobalt blue, reflecting upon the waters of Puget Sound, sparkling as if plated with silver. I stood in the living room of the glass cliff for the last time. The scent of fresh paint and cedar wood wafted gently in the air. The west panorama glass wall, once jaggedly drilled into by Lucas, has now been completely replaced. I had to specifically invite the engineering team from Schuko to fly in from Germany to execute this task. The new monolithic glass pane is so transparent that without the sun's reflection, one would think nothing separates the room from the vast ocean beyond. The cost for repairing and reinforcing the house's structure set me back exactly $200,000. A figure enough to buy a small apartment in the suburbs. Many people called me crazy for pouring more money into a place holding such terrible memories. But to me, that wasn't a renovation cost. That was the price of purification. I needed to return the glass cliff to its integrity before I could let it go. And more importantly, that $200,000 was a low price to pay for something 10,000 times more valuable, a permanent boundary with the past. I heard footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Elias Sterling walked in, holding 2 glasses of wine. This time it was real wine, a bottle of Chateau Margaux 2009. "It is perfect, Elena," Sterling said, handing me a glass and joining me in gazing at the horizon. "You have resurrected it." "It was always perfect, Elias," I smiled, accepting the glass. "It just used to harbor people unworthy of it." Today is the day I officially hand over the keys to Sterling. He bought the glass cliff for $8.5 million, nearly double what I originally spent. He didn't buy it just for the architecture. He bought it for the story behind it. He calls it the House of Justice. To an eccentric billionaire like Sterling, owning a symbol of the punishment of evil and the triumph of competence is far more interesting than any piece of art. With the money from the sale, I didn't buy supercars or jewelry. I used a large portion to execute the most meaningful transaction of my life. I opened my phone, looking at the latest photo Arthur sent. In the picture, the 70-year-old man was sitting on the porch of a sturdy oak cabin, with the majestic snow-capped mountains of Montana behind him. Arthur was smiling a serene smile I had never seen on him throughout his years battling in the marketplace. I bought him that 500-acre ranch, a place where he can fish for trout in the Blackfoot River every morning and read by the fireplace every evening. Arthur has no children, and he spent his life protecting my father's legacy, protecting me from the claws of greed. When I handed him the deed to the ranch, he wept. He said, "Elena, I only did what a friend should do." I held his hand and replied, "No, Uncle Arthur, you did what a father should do." Family, I realized, is not defined by DNA or kinship. Family is a verb, not a noun. Family is the people who stand by you when the whole world turns its back, the people who celebrate your success without calculating benefits. Arthur is my family, and those who share my blood. Their fate has been decided by their own choices. My mother, Patricia, is currently living in an apartment less than 40 square meters in a subsidized housing complex in South Seattle. After the bank and creditors foreclosed on the old house and the Lexus, she had nothing left. No more afternoon teas with the ladies' club. No more luxury shopping trips. She had to learn how to ride the bus and live on food stamps. She still calls me every week, calls from strange numbers that I never pick up but never block, letting the voicemail record automatically. I listen to the messages she leaves. Sometimes it's weeping and begging for money. Sometimes bitter curses, blaming me for being an unfilial daughter who pushed her into poverty. But I feel no pain anymore. I hear her voice like the noise of a distant construction site. I don't send her a single cent. Instead, every month I mail an envelope to her apartment. Inside is not a check, but brochures for rehab centers and moral rehabilitation courses for wayward people. I include a note, "For Lucas when he gets out." Lucas was sentenced to 24 months in prison for financial fraud and document forgery. Mason, the lawyer, told me that in prison. Lucas still tells his cellmates that he is a tech genius sabotaged by his sister. He still lives in delusion. But when he walks out of those iron gates, there will be no one to welcome him, no sister to pay his debts, no old mother with assets to mortgage. He will have to face a brutal real world where no one cares about his vision if he refuses to labor. That is the greatest kindness I can offer them, letting them take responsibility for their own lives. I set the wine glass down, turning to Sterling. The house is yours, Elias. Treat it well. Where will you go? Elena, Sterling asked. The Obsidian Project is waiting for you. I'll be there next week, I smiled, adjusting my blazer lapel. But first, I need to take a little break. I want to visit my father. I drove away from the glass cliff, never once glancing back in the rearview mirror. On the way to the cemetery, I reflected on the biggest lesson architecture and life has taught me. In construction, the most terrifying thing isn't a storm or an earthquake. The most terrifying thing is a compromised foundation. You can build a magnificent skyscraper, clad in marble and gilded in gold, but if the foundation beneath is sinking, corroded by groundwater or termites, collapse is inevitable. The higher you build, the harder the fall. Humans are the same. We often spend our lives building flashy, glass walls career, reputation, wealth. And we often try to use plaster and paint to cover up the cracks in family relationships, fearing social judgment, fearing being labeled unfilial, fearing loneliness. We tolerate toxicity in the name of kinship. We let loved ones drain our energy, finances, and self-esteem, deceiving ourselves that it is a noble sacrifice. But you cannot build your life on a foundation of exploitation. When I demolished the illusion of family, I was in great pain. It felt like smashing my own finger with a hammer. But it was a necessary pain, like amputating a gangrenous limb to save a life. If you are listening to this story and see yourself in it, if you are the pillar carrying ungrateful people, if you are being manipulated by the words flesh and blood, remember this. Sometimes, the greatest act of self-love is stepping back and letting those who always lean on you fall. Only when they hit the hard ground will they learn how to stand up on their own. And if they can't stand up, that is not your fault. You are the architect of your own life, not a crutch for someone else's. I stopped the car in front of Dad's grave. The rain had completely stopped. Afternoon sunlight slanted through the canopy of old oaks, creating golden streaks on the headstone. I placed a bouquet of white lilies, the flower symbolizing rebirth, on his grave. I did it, Dad, I whispered. I couldn't keep the family together like you wanted, but I kept myself. And I believe, somewhere, Dad is smiling, because finally, his little girl is no longer a lifeless, load-bearing column. I have become an independent, sturdy building, with a foundation cast in truth and freedom.